Hi everyone, my name is Ellsworth-Kopkowski. I'm a librarian at the East Campus, and today I'd like to talk to you about how to search for context when you're reading short stories. So a little bit about myself. Normally I'd be able to come into your classroom and I'd probably give you the same introduction before we got into the lesson. Um, I went to NAU for my undergraduate degree. It was in public health. And then I went to the U of A for my master's in library science, and I'm currently a PhD candidate studying American Indian Studies and public health. So you'll also see the sun and the cloud symbol, and that's because I study climate change. I'm an Arizona native. I'm a big fan of dogs. I also really like sunflowers, and I have 2 kids. So this is kind of like an outline of what this lesson will be. And we're going to cover what notes you should take while reading the story, what databases you should search for more information about the story, and then how to download and save articles for your paper, and how to download and save citations for your paper. So the short story I picked as an example is The Yellow Wallpaper. It's a pretty famous short story, and um, it's one that a lot of our classes at Pima cover, and it happens to be one of my favorites. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to read the story all the way through. While you read it, if you happen to have printed the article, you want to underline or take notes of any quotes you like. If you didn't print it, you could still do that from your computer, right? You could use the highlight tool if you're reading from Adobe Acrobat, and that's what I would recommend. Again, if anything just like really sticks out to you, be sure to take note of that. The other thing you'll want to make sure that you can answer is what the setting is. And you'll also want to know if you can tell what time frame it was written in, because that will also help you when you go to search. And lastly, we are going to want to ask questions such as what's going on in the world at the time the story was written. And again, that's going to help you provide more context to the story. Some other questions to ask or to think about when you're reading are what is the major theme of the story? And another good way to think of this is what are the keywords of the story, right? So if I was going to read The Yellow Wallpaper, for example, what might be the keywords then that I would search for later on in the library databases? So for this story, some of my keywords might be feminism or women or even mental health, right? So we'll want to keep track of these themes or keywords. Lastly, now that you've thought about these questions, you want to reread the story. Does it have a different effect on you? And would the story have the same themes if it was written today? Right? So for this example, it is set in Victorian times. And during that time, there wasn't a lot of say in mental health care. It was very common for people to just be committed or held against their will at a hospital or an asylum. And we really don't do that today. So that might help you think about that. For example, in answering this last question, if the author was alive today, the story might be very different, right? So again, some things to think about. So the first thing we're going to go over is how to search online for more context. You'll want to go to the library website. The link is here in the presentation that I will provide Carmen. Then you will want to go to articles and databases, and then you'll want to search databases by subject. As you can see here in the drop-down menu, we have a literature subject database. You select Go, and then I would suggest starting with Literary Reference Center Plus. As you can see here though, these are all of the databases that cover literature as a subject. So The ones that we have starred are the ones that we also recommend. But really, you can use any of them. Um, Depending on what you're looking for, you might get different results, right? So maybe you want to know what another author has to say about the work. Then you would want to search, for example, literary or literature criticism, because you would want to know what the criticism of the piece is. But for this example, we're going to go to Literary Reference Center Plus. So again, we already talked about what the themes were, what keywords we might want to search for. Here's a list of terms I might search for based on reading the yellow wallpaper. So the first one is the author's name, of course. That's a great way to get more context about the piece. You find out who the author is, what the themes that they wrote about were, how famous they were during their time, how prolific of a writer they were, and how their work was received. These are all important clues to add to what you will be writing or answering in regards to the story after reading it. Some other terms that I might use are the yellow wallpaper and feminism. In my opinion, it really helps if you add the title of the story and then the keyword, because that's going to pull up results, that not only touch on the theme that you're trying to look up, but that are related specifically to that story. Another example of that would be to search for the yellow wallpaper and women. Okay, so if I go to the database and search for the yellow wallpaper and women, I find the following article. So it's the 6th result, and I just have copied what that looks like here in the search results. And then you will want to click on PDF full text. The first thing you'll want to do is click on email. So it'll be over here to the right on the toolbar. You will select email, and you can enter any email address that you most frequently use in the to field. It doesn't have to be your PIMA email address, for example. Then the next step is you'll want to be sure you select MLA citation right here, because then you will receive a copy of the article and the MLA citation that you will need later on. Finally, you want to go back to our library website. Again, this will be linked in the presentation, and then search for broader topics that you can apply to your story. So when we search in MegaSearch, that searches our entire library catalog. So we're getting many more results than just what we might be able to find in the literature databases, for example. So if I search for mental health and Victorian, I get some interesting results. And one of the results I find here is this journal, Possession or Insanity, 2 Views from the Victorian Lunatic Asylum. I feel like this would greatly help, provide more context to the story. So I'm going to repeat the same steps we did before. So the first thing you're going to do is email the article to yourself, and then again select MLA citation. And after reading this, you're going to be able to apply this particular setting and societal phenomenon back to the story that you're reading. Finally, I just want to let you know that we're here to help. As you complete the assignment, just remember to keep taking good notes. Again, underline or take note of what you feel is important. You want to think not just about the story the author was trying to tell, but why the author wrote the story, right? So for this example, perhaps the author wanted to make a commentary about women being forced into a hospital against their will, or women not being listened to, either as patients or in their marriage. Here are some other questions, again, that might help you as you think about what you need to look for when completing your research? Was the author famous in their time? Did the author write about similar themes or settings? Is it a comment on something about society, a time period, an important historical event? By answering these questions, you can then write more about the short story. And finally, I'd like you to remember to please email me. My address is here at the bottom. It's akopkowski@pima.edu, and I will answer your email within 24 hours. But if you're especially pressed for time and you tell me that in the email, I'll be sure to reply to you as soon as I can. I thank you guys for your time, and I wish you luck on the assignment.